sometimes you have to take a step back to move forward. Hi friends, I'm finally back with another devlog update on my first video game ever. A 2.5D platformer about a small doggy knight trying to find his way back home. It's been a hot second, and to be completely honest, it's not just due to work and other responsibilities that I haven't been able to post in a couple of months. My energy was kind of gone as well. While I was feeling a bit burned out, I think my issue was mostly related to editing. Editing is still a Herculean task for me that is taking forever, but especially when I was using Premiere Pro. It made dealing with hour-long footage a nightmare, and man did I have a lot of footage. Up until this point, my strategy has always been to record every second I was working in Unreal. That meant among the moments of success were hours of useless footage. Next were the wait times to export proxies. Hey guys, I'm currently editing the video, and I was going to do a little B-roll segment about Premiere Pro, but as you already saw there, just exporting proxies is an absolute nightmare. Yeah, like, it thinks that Media Encoder isn't installed when it clearly is installed and it's open, whatever. I've had nothing but issues with Premiere Pro, and I'm glad to have moved on to greener pastures. So let's get back to the video. All of this made editing feel like climbing the misty mountains, so I started looking for alternatives and eventually found DaVinci Resolve. I don't think I've ever been happier to edit videos. That being said, because so much time has passed since the last update, I'll have to break this vlog down into manageable chunks. So let's get started. Where did we leave off? In the last video, I showed off some controls I had coded, a prototype level, and some interactables. Technically, I had also added some collectible coins, a simple UI, and lives that would deplete on respawn. I just hadn't shown those updates yet. Working on all of those things simultaneously made me feel a bit lost. For any of you who have ADD or ADHD, you can probably relate. Sometimes, it's really hard for my mind to focus on a single task at a time. I get sidetracked, start something else, and completely forget about the previous thing, only to remember hours later what it was I originally intended to do. Anyways, I feel that's what happened to me on the project and with the things I started to add to the game. How did I find my way back? To regain focus, I chose to stay away from Unreal for a bit. Instead, I spent time setting up a project on Milanote, which I think works better for me than Trello. I began writing down some thoughts and ideas, starting with the characters. There's Tyrion, the hero and player character. The story of this game is quite heavily centered around him. Next up is Cersei, although she responds more to Meow Meows or Mr. Kitty. While I don't fully know her role in the story yet, she will definitely be a boss of some sort. Speaking of, I also jotted down an idea for a boss based on Tyrion's fear of Roombas. I think it will be quite fun to design a character that fits into the world and is based on vacuum cleaners. Aside from characters, I also took the opportunity to organize my to-do list, and with that came to the conclusion to focus my energy into one area before starting other pipeline steps. Looking back, I think this quickly got out of hand. Not only did I make myself an elaborate map of what animation states there would be, how they connect, but I also started to think about directional differences. Tyrion's character design is asymmetrical in nature, and to walk screen left, I'm currently flipping the drawings. This is a dilemma that sometimes comes up on 2D animated shows. If I was to adjust the cycles based on which direction Tyrion faces, it would definitely create some extra work. Yet if I just flip them, I could consider a few animation states finished. Beyond this, I also had a thought about the ability to draw and sheath Tyrion's weapons. As you can imagine, that ended up ballooning my list of animation states. In the end, this feature isn't detrimental to the gameplay and only makes the controls more complicated, which is why I shelved it. Making the drawings. I began by breaking all the character animations up into different groups to make everything more manageable. Each group was representative of how many drawings per rough animation would be needed. Let me show you. Crouch walking, for example, needs 4 keyframes to cover the entire walk. Exhausted idle only needs 2 keyframes, one for breathing in and one for breathing out. Once I had my groups, I began with the least time-consuming poses. Personally, I find it less exhausting to get the momentum going when working on easy things, leaving the harder stuff for later. Regardless, even with proper time management, it can still be hard. As I was working my way through the groups, there were days when I would feel burned out from all the drawing. In those moments, it did take a lot to force myself to focus. Nevertheless, I made it through. A new beginning. Moving on to the next step, I created a new Unreal project file while using the old one as a reference. This time I paid more attention to folder structure, naming conventions, and keeping my blueprints cleaner. To achieve this, I replaced the millions of booleans I was using with gameplay tags as a means to track the player character's state. Besides this, I also started using comment boxes a lot more, breaking up strings of code to make it easier for me to understand. I even have these neat little comment boxes that tell me which state and what the status is of whatever code I'm working on. It wasn't all smooth sailing though. Something interesting that I learned was that Unreal doesn't like file paths that are as long as German words. Apparently, if you stack too many folders inside of each other, it will restrict the naming of files themselves, something that affected the naming of flipbooks I created, which I'll address in the future. The current state of things. While I did most of the coding in the 5.03 build of Unreal, I recently decided to switch over to 5.1. With this came some attempts at updating my inputs to the new enhanced input features, which made me realize that the old inputs for my forward and backward movement used to fire all the time. That was quite useful for Tyrion's mad dash state. This is a gameplay feature that mirrors some of Tyrion's actual antics. When he gets excited, he would usually do a big and silly looking antic, hold for a beat, and then start running. In the game, he already is running for his forward and backward movement, so for the dash, he would need to run at an increased speed. This is triggered by a little cube actor that gets destroyed as soon as it overlaps with Tyrion. I'm doing a quick interruption here. I'm actually missing some footage, and it's way too much work to try and recreate this. About the dash feature, in the beginning, you used to have control completely over all the directions that you could move in, but then I decided that was no fun at all and took control away from the player. So now Tyrion starts dashing and you have like slight control over Tyrion's speed. You know, you can dodge, you can slide under stuff, but overall Tyrion just runs by himself, which I think is a lot more fun. Here you can see how I got this to work. Aside from the mad dash, Tyrion can also bark. I thought it would be cool if the bark would act as a sort of shockwave that could push nearby enemies back, rotate platforms, and move objects. So I added a hitbox that changes size when Tyrion barks. I also finally coded a crouch walk, a feature I had a while back when I was still using a different character. Back then I had an issue with the sprite location, which was something I ran into again. This problem might be related to the sprite pivot point. While I haven't fixed Tyrion's pivots, I moved the sprite location up by a small value. This seems to work fine for now. I did a similar thing during the jump. In an older version of the game, Tyrion's capsule component would constantly get snagged on platforms, even when the sprite itself was well clear of the object. While I could move all the sprites to be in the same exact location, I decided to go a different route, as not to mess with the way the animation plays. To be honest, I'm quite happy with the end result. It even makes it seem like Tyrion has a little bit more hang time. Moving on, I added blocking, multiple attacks, hurt and dead state, as well as sitting, which currently only plays after Tyrion's dash, to make it seem like he's exhausted. What's next? Well, let's just say the things that I initially planned for this chunk, I've already kind of done, at least some of them. I changed up some stuff on Milanode, made it a little bit more of a roadmap for myself. As you can see here, I've added some versions to make it feel a bit more motivating for myself, looking ahead at actually creating a working prototype, which I would consider version 1.0. Right now, I've already finished the very first list of tasks for version 0.1. I switched more mechanics over to enhanced inputs, added the slide feature and made it work, reworked the attacks. I made sure to add some widgets, some functionality for mouse, navigating the menus, all that to essentially make a build that you can play out of the box the way it is right now. It doesn't have a whole lot of gameplay features, but it's the first step in the right direction of a working prototype. To no surprise, I feel that the more I use Unreal, the easier it gets. Looking back, I'm motivated by how far I've come. I also realized that taking a step back sometimes can be really helpful to figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. In the case of this project, it helped me refocus on the character mechanics, which I feel are the most difficult and important step to deal with, as they will inform the level design and features of this game. Lastly, I want to give a big shout out to you guys, the community. Thank you for all the support and feedback I've received so far. A special thank you to Husky for all the code examples and ideas you've sent my way, and Whimsical Wisp for the support on Patreon. With this, I'll wrap the episode up. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and comment if you have any suggestions for future content or the game itself. Also, if you're a fan of ambient sounds and chill music, you should check out this video on my channel. I run a small digital tavern called The Drunken Boar, and while it's always open during my streams, you can also chill here when I'm not online, or at the quest board. With that, I'll see you next time.